Hi, I'm Kimberly Thomas. I'm a business solution architect at Magento. Many of you may know me as Magento Girl on Twitter. I've been involved with the Magento community for 6 to 7 years, and I've hosted many events such as Meet Magento New York, Pre-Imagine, and the New York City Magento Meetup. I'm a Magento certified specialist and also a certified Scrum Master. I work at ECG, which is the Expert Consulting Group. We provide professional services for partners and merchants on the Magento platform. We provide services such as code audits, performance reviews, technical consulting, M1 to M2 upgrades, and we're here to help. So this is a talk about Scrum and Agile development methodologies, and it's not necessarily a representation of what we do at Magento. Just a little disclaimer there. So first, let's talk about Scrum. In Scrum, we have team players. We have a product owner who's a visionary and a strategist. They provide all the requirements for the project and the vision. Next, we have the Scrum Master, who's a facilitator and manages the information exchange. It's also their job to remove any impediments for the team. And then we have the team who's self-organizing. Some of the core principles of Scrum: we have a backlog of user stories. We have sprints, which can be 1 to 4 weeks long. We kick off those sprints with sprint planning meetings where the team gets together and chooses which tasks to work on for the sprint and makes a commitment to finish those. We also have daily Scrum meetings, which are 15 minutes long, standing up, hopefully, and each team member goes around and says what they did do and what they will do, and any blockers they may have. At the end of a sprint, it's very important to have a demo for the product owner to show what's been completed and make sure you're on track. Also, it's the retrospective, where the team gets together and talks about what worked and what didn't, and what improvements they can make going forward. Another important principle of Scrum is the definition of done. The team needs to agree on what things have to be done in order to consider a ticket complete. So for example, the definition of done might be development's complete, tests are written, code is reviewed, and QA has passed. So a task is not considered done until all those steps have been completed. In Scrum, we also have user stories, which are action stories for the software user that describe the type of user, what they want, and why. A user story helps to create a simplified description of a requirement. I also have here a picture of an old school Scrum board. This is how, when I first practiced Scrum in the office, we had an actual board on the wall with stickies for each of our user stories and more stickies for our estimates, and we moved them along the columns till they got to be done. Well, nowadays we have better technologies. So some of the tools that you can use for practicing Scrum are JIRA and Assembla. My favorite right now is JIRA. And with JIRA, you can create your user stories and your sprints, assign your tickets to your team members. And after you complete your sprints, you get some really good reporting. And a great report is the velocity report. This report shows how much your team completed in hours or story points for a sprint. So you'll see on this chart, the gray line is what the commitment for the sprint was, and the green line is what was actually accomplished. So the final velocity of this team was 168 hours. Therefore, they know for their next sprint, they can choose 168 hours of tickets to work on. Another great report is the burn down report. This is a release burn down, and it shows how much has been completed each sprint, and it can help predict when the release will be completed. But let's also talk about being agile. Sometimes I say agile, sometimes I say agile. I don't know, I go back and forth. So the definition is being able to move quickly and easily. If you're doing Scrum, you can only consider that you're doing Scrum if you're following it very rigidly. So Agile, for me, is doing what works for your team. On an Agile team, you might not have a product owner, so you might have a business analyst who acts as the proxy product owner. And you might have an architect who acts as the Scrum Master, and then you'll have your team. For the Agile methodologies, we have the backlog with prune tickets with estimates. We have sprints with tickets to be worked on, and we kick off those sprints with the sprint planning meeting. There's also the daily stand-up. You see I have a question mark there. You know, it's up to your team to decide what works for them. Maybe they don't need a daily stand-up if they have really good communication, and they only need to stand up every 2 days. For the sprint planning meeting, this is something that's taken place Monday mornings, and the new sprint is created, and the prior sprint is closed. The team picks tickets to be worked on. The tickets that they pick must be estimated. They pick tickets with a total time equal to their velocity, which we could learn from the velocity report. When you're first kicking off a project, you might not know what your velocity is, so you can estimate your velocity based on the number of hours available for your developers. I also wanted to talk about the anatomy of a ticket, because you can only work, proceed well in your sprints if you have good requirements in your tickets. I've seen a lot of tickets out there in JIRA with just a summary or one sentence and barely any information. So I like to say that the required fields to start a ticket are the summary, a detailed description, attachments, maybe it's a wireframe or a design or a screenshot or a diagram, and an estimate. I like to create all the tickets for a release at the beginning, ideally with estimates. You can go through a practice called Scrum Poker to estimate your tickets with your team. You get together with your team, say there's 5 people, you talk about a ticket, everyone throws out an estimate for that ticket, you throw out the highest and you throw out the lowest and you take the average of the other 3. And that's Scrum Poker. Let's talk about ticket workflow. Here this workflow is to do, then it's selected for development and goes into in progress, it's dev complete, it goes into testing, and then it's ready for deployment. So this is a custom workflow created in JIRA, and this shows you what the definition of done for this project is. A ticket is not considered completed until it's ready for deployment. I also have here to talk about a case study. So we can talk about Scrum in a real world example. Laces is a Magento store that sells sneakers. It has pretty simple requirements. It wants to have a modern look and feel, a home, category, and product page, and checkout. They also want to have a shoe customizer that allows a user to select the color of the shoe, trim and laces, and upload a logo. So the tickets that may be created, the high-level tickets that may be created for this, for laces, under the Epic theming, we have tickets for styling the homepage, category, product pages, and checkout. And then we have Epic backend for creating the shoe customizer. And this is what our backlog looks like as we're working on Sprint 2. So the sprint's been started, and we're working on Sprint 2, and you can see the 5 tickets that are in progress, and that there's still 3 tickets left in the backlog. Also, customizing JIRA, you can set it up so that you can see, you'll see that I have on there launch 1, theming, 8 hours. It's showing the version, the epic, and the estimated time. So at a glance, you can really get a great idea of the health of your project and where you are with things. Here's an example of the Scrum board for laces. And the Scrum board is really the best place to get an at a glance of where you are with things. This one has columns set up to match our ticket workflow. So you can see that we have stuff to do, stuff in progress, we have 1 thing in test, and 1 thing done. Again, you can utilize JIRA to configure your board. You can put whatever columns that you want, and you can also decide what you want to show on your cards. So if you want to show the estimated time, time remaining, an epic, status, you can customize that for your board very easily. Some popular questions that I get is, what do I do with tickets from a previous sprint that are not finished? Well, you can only have one sprint at a time. So the tickets from the previous sprint are moved to the new sprint or the backlog. What do I do if new priorities come up during a sprint, like a Magento security patch? Well, you add the ticket, and you can't stress over it when your priorities change. This is what being Agile is about. What do I do if I run out of tickets during a sprint? Well, you can select more tickets. JIRA likes to complain if you add more tickets to your sprint after you've started it, but I just ignore that. I wanted to say a few words about estimates. It's very hard for developers to give estimates, and we have to remember that estimates are educated guesses. You have to start in the beginning with even a little information, and then you can keep refining as you learn more. So in the beginning, you can give a rough estimate for your task, and as you learn more about that task, and in your sprint planning meeting, you can re-estimate your task. You can also learn from the reports in JIRA of estimated versus actual time to see how you're doing and to learn more for your future sprints. So some tips about JIRA are that you can create your own workflow, you can configure your boards. I recommend using version and epics, and I'll talk more about that. It's very important to log your worked time so that you can use the reports. So here's an example about epics. I chose epics based on theming, backend, and setup, so kind of like the area of development. You could also have your epics based on like the area of the website, like customers, catalog, checkout. But when you use epics, you can filter by them in your backlog. So if you wanted to just see just the theming tasks, and you can see that there's 5 issues outstanding and that the total estimate is 48 hours. So it helps me for resourcing to know by theming, okay, I need 2 front-end developers to finish this epic. Then you can also get an epic burn down report, and you can see for theming when you're going to be complete with this project. You can also do the same thing for versions. You can filter by your versions, and it also helps to let your developers know what's going to be in version 1, what's going to be in post-launch 1.1, etc. You can then get a version report, which will show the scheduled release date and help you to see if you're on track. I also wanted to talk about using Git with Agile. So a ticket is started and the status is set to in progress. Simultaneously, in Git, a branch is created for the ticket based off of master, and it's created with a number and a description like 10 shoe customizer. When the task is completed and committed, a pull request is created to develop. The tech lead reviews the code and approves the pull request, or it could be reopened. Code is deployed to the QA server, and the ticket status is set to test. If the test passed, the ticket is set to ready, or it can be reopened. Finally, the release deployment merges all ready tickets to master, and a tag is created in Git, and code is deployed to production. So here's an overall view of the process, the Agile process, ticket workflow, and Git all together. So what not to do when being Agile? Don't make one sprint and reuse it. I've seen this happen before, and it's not good practice because the point of doing sprints and making a commitment is that your team commits to completing what is in that sprint in their sprint time frame. And then also you can't use the reports. Don't skip on estimating your tickets. I know as Scrum Master, like one of the things I'm always doing is bugging people to estimate their tickets. Nobody ever really wants to do that part. Don't use JIRA just for ticket management. I've also seen many projects entering tickets, the great tickets, they have all their information in there, but they're just entering their tickets and there's just a sea of tickets and they're not utilizing sprints. Most of all, don't skip on making tickets. Everything should be in JIRA. You shouldn't make outside requests on Skype or via email or in person. You should make a ticket for everything, and never, please ever, use an Excel spreadsheet. What are some of the benefits of Scrum or Agile? You can always see the sprint status at a glance. You can easily determine when the product will be completed using the reports. And you have happy developers.